The blood-red sun cast long shadows over the dust-covered streets of Silver Creek as Eliza Winters stumbled and fell, her hands scraping against the hard, packed dirt. It was 1875, and the Arizona Territory showed no mercy to anyone, least of all a woman who had dared to stand up to Fletcher Blackwater, the most feared man in the county. His thick fingers were tangled in her copper hair, dragging her down the main street while townsfolk turned away, pretending not to see. "You'll learn your place, woman," Fletcher snarled, his alcohol-laden breath hot against her face as he yanked her head back. "No one refuses me. Especially not some stubborn schoolteacher." Eliza's blue eyes watered from pain, but she refused to cry out. At 22, she had come west with dreams of independence and purpose. Teaching in a frontier town had seemed like an adventure. Now, 6 months later, she was learning the brutal reality of a place where law existed only on paper. "Please," she whispered, her throat dry from the dust. "You're hurting me." Fletcher laughed, the sound cruel and cutting. "That's the point, darling. Next time I ask you to join me for dinner, you'll remember this and say yes." The onlookers remained frozen in doorways and behind windows. Fletcher Blackwater owned half the businesses in town, including the silver mine that kept most of them employed. No one dared cross him. No one except the stranger who had ridden into town just that morning. "That's enough." The voice cut through the whispers and uncomfortable shuffling of the crowd. Deep and steady, it belonged to a man standing in the middle of the street, silhouetted against the setting sun. Fletcher paused, Eliza's hair still twisted around his fist. "Mind your own business, stranger, if you aim to keep breathing." Finn Everett stepped forward, the wooden boardwalk creaking under his boots. His face was partially shadowed by his wide-brimmed hat, but there was no hiding the hard line of his jaw or the determined set of his shoulders beneath his dusty duster coat. "When a man drags a lady through the dirt, it becomes everybody's business," Finn said, his hand resting casually near his holstered Colt. "Let her go." Fletcher's grip tightened, causing Eliza to wince. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Don't much care," Finn replied. "But I know what you are. A coward who hurts women to feel powerful." The crowd collectively held its breath. No one spoke to Fletcher Blackwater that way. "I own this town," Fletcher growled. "Not the parts I'm standing on," Finn countered. "Last chance. Let her go." For a moment that stretched like eternity, Fletcher's eyes darted between Finn and the gathering crowd. Something in the stranger's steady gaze made him hesitate. With a disgusted grunt, he released Eliza's hair, shoving her roughly to the ground. "This isn't over," he threatened, backing away. "You just made an enemy, Cowboy." Finn didn't respond, simply watching as Fletcher stormed off toward the saloon, his boot heels kicking up dust. Only when the man was gone did Finn approach Eliza, crouching down beside her. "Are you hurt, madam?" he asked, his voice gentler now. Eliza looked up at him, taking in the face of her rescuer. He was younger than she'd expected from his voice, perhaps 28 or 30, with eyes the color of a storm-swept sky and several days' worth of stubble shadowing his jaw. There was a thin scar cutting through his right eyebrow, but it did nothing to diminish the kindness in his expression. "Nothing that won't heal," she managed, trying to gather her dignity along with her scattered belongings. Her hands trembled as she reached for her fallen reticule. Finn collected it for her, offering it along with his hand. "Can you stand?" She nodded, accepting his help. As she rose to her feet, she became acutely aware of the spectacle they had created. Townspeople were emerging now that Fletcher had gone, watching with curious eyes. "Thank you, mister." She began. "Everett, Finn Everett." He released her hand but remained close. "And you are?" "Eliza Winters. I'm the schoolteacher here." She attempted to smooth her hair and dust-covered dress, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. I apologize that your first impression of our town was so unpleasant. A slight smile touched his lips. Not your fault, Miss Winters. His eyes scanned the still-watching crowd with a hint of disgust. Seems to me the unpleasant part was everyone standing by while that happened. Sheriff Miller finally approached, his badge gleaming dully in the fading light. "Now see here," he began, his voice carrying the slight quiver of a man who knew he'd failed in his duty. "We don't need any trouble." "Bit late for that," Finn remarked. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Fletcher Blackwater is an important man in Silver Creek. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." Eliza stiffened. "The only misunderstanding, Sheriff, is that Mr. Blackwater believed I would accept his advances. When I refused, he decided to teach me a lesson. There was nothing ambiguous about being dragged through the street by my hair." Sheriff Miller shifted uncomfortably. "Well, Miss Winters, perhaps if you hadn't been so careful how you finished that sentence," Finn interrupted, his voice low but carrying a clear warning. The sheriff's mouth snapped shut. After a moment, he adjusted his hat. "Well, best you both get along home. It'll be dark soon." He nodded curtly and retreated toward his office. "Helpful law enforcement you have here," Finn observed dryly. Eliza sighed. "Sheriff Miller's salary comes from town taxes, and Fletcher Blackwater pays most of those taxes." A small crowd had gathered now, including Martha Jenkins, the owner of the general store, who rushed forward with concern etched on her motherly face. "Eliza, dear, are you all right? Come inside, let me get you cleaned up." "I'm fine, Martha, thank you," Eliza assured her, though her scalp still stung and her hands were scraped raw. "You can't go back to that boarding house tonight," Martha insisted. "Fletcher might come looking for you there." Fear flickered across Eliza's face before she could hide it. Martha was right. The boarding house offered little security, especially against a man like Fletcher. "She can come with me," Finn said unexpectedly. Both women turned to him in surprise. He quickly clarified, I was planning to make camp outside town. It would be safer than staying where he can find you, just until things cool down." Martha frowned. "Go off with a stranger." "I don't think I'll go," Eliza interrupted. The decision crystallized in her mind with sudden clarity. She had seen the cold fury in Fletcher's eyes. He wouldn't forgive the public humiliation easily. Just for tonight, to let him cool down. Finn studied her face. "You sure?" Eliza nodded, straightening her shoulders. "I need to collect some things from the schoolhouse first." "I'll accompany you," he offered. Martha looked between them, clearly torn. "Eliza, are you certain? You hardly know this man." "I know he was the only one who stood up for me when it mattered," Eliza replied. "I'll be fine, Martha. Mr. Everett saved me once today already." Finn tipped his hat to Martha. "You have my word, madam. No harm will come to Miss Winters." Martha still looked doubtful but nodded reluctantly. "Come by the store first. I'll pack you some food and supplies." As the crowd dispersed, Eliza felt the weight of stares following them. Her reputation, already precarious as a single woman in a frontier town, would surely suffer from this public spectacle and her decision to leave with Finn. But at that moment, safety seemed more important than propriety. "The schoolhouse is this way," she said, gesturing down the street. "It's not far." They walked in silence for several moments before Finn spoke. "Does this happen often, Blackwater? Bothering you?" Eliza kept her eyes forward. "He's made his interest clear since I arrived 6 months ago. I've always refused him politely. Today was the first time he escalated things. And no one stepped in to help," Finn observed, his voice tight with disapproval. "Fletcher owns the mine. Without it, this town wouldn't exist." She glanced at him. "What brought you to Silver Creek, Mr. Everett?" We don't get many visitors. Finn, please. He adjusted his hat. Just passing through, heading north to Colorado territory. A drifter then. Something crossed his face, a flash of something deeper than the casual traveler he portrayed. Something like that. They reached the small wooden schoolhouse at the edge of town. Eliza unlocked the door and stepped into the single-room building with its neat rows of desks and primer books stacked on shelves. "It's not much," she said, moving to her desk where she kept a small trunk of personal items. "But these children deserve an education, even out here." Finn remained by the door, his eyes scanning the humble classroom. "You must care about them a great deal to come all this way." "I do," she said, gathering a change of clothes and a few precious books. "Most of them have never been beyond Silver Creek. Books are their only window to the wider world." She hesitated, then added, "That's why I can't just leave, despite what happened today. These children need me." "Admirable," Finn said, a genuine respect in his voice. "But you need to be safe to teach them." Eliza closed her trunk, having taken what she needed. "I'm ready." They stopped at Martha's store, where the older woman provided them with bread, dried meat, and coffee. She also pressed a small revolver into Eliza's hands. "It was my late husband's," Martha explained. "I'd feel better knowing you have it." Eliza hesitated before tucking it into her bag. "Thank you, Martha." Martha hugged her tightly. "Be careful, dear. And you," she turned to Finn with narrowed eyes, "you bring her back safely, you hear?" "Yes, madam," Finn replied solemnly. As they left town, the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the mountains. Finn led Eliza to where his horse, a sturdy chestnut gelding, was hitched outside the livery. "Can you ride?" he asked, untying the reins. "Yes, though it's been some time." Finn mounted first, then extended his hand to help her up behind him. Eliza hesitated only briefly before accepting, settling awkwardly behind him with her arms loosely around his waist. "Hold tight," he advised. "It's about an hour's ride to where I was planning to make camp." As they rode away from Silver Creek, Eliza felt a complex mixture of fear and relief. She had never done anything so impulsive, leaving town with a man she'd just met. But something about Finn Everett inspired trust, despite his mysterious air. The desert landscape opened before them, bathed in silver moonlight. Stars appeared one by one in the vast sky, more than Eliza had ever seen back east. The rhythmic movement of the horse and the solid presence of Finn gradually eased the tension from her shoulders. "Thank you," she said softly, her words nearly lost in the night air, "for what you did back there." Finn was quiet for so long she thought he hadn't heard her. Finally, he responded, "No decent man could have done otherwise." "Yet you were the only one who did," she pointed out. "Perhaps there's a shortage of decent men in Silver Creek," he suggested, a hint of wry humor in his voice. They continued in comfortable silence until they reached a small canyon with a freshwater spring. Cottonwood trees provided natural shelter, and the high walls would block the wind. "We'll camp here," Finn announced, dismounting and offering his hand to help her down. Eliza's legs felt unsteady after the long ride. "It's beautiful," she remarked, taking in the secluded spot. Finn began unloading his saddlebags. "It's secure. Only one way in or out, and the spring provides fresh water." "You've stayed here before." "Once or twice," he acknowledged, without elaborating. He busied himself gathering firewood while Eliza spread out the blanket Martha had provided. Soon, a small fire crackled, pushing back the desert night chill. Finn brewed coffee in a battered tin pot and offered Eliza the first cup. "It's strong," he warned as she took a cautious sip. "It's good," she replied, grateful for the warmth. "Though I usually take mine with sugar." "Not much call for sugar on the trail," Finn said with a slight smile. He settled across from her, the firelight casting shadows across his features. "So, Miss Winters, what brought you all the way from?" He paused, studying her. "Pennsylvania, Massachusetts." "Boston," she confirmed, impressed by his perception. "Is my accent so obvious? To someone who's traveled, yes." He sipped his coffee. "That doesn't answer my question, though." Eliza gazed into the flames. "My parents died 2 years ago, influenza. I was teaching at a ladies' academy in Boston, but afterward. The city held too many memories. When I saw the advertisement for a teacher needed in Arizona territory, it seemed like fate. Quite a change." "Yes," she agreed, "but necessary. What about you? Where are you from?" Finn's expression closed slightly. "Here and there, born in Texas, and your family, gone," he said simply. "A long time ago." Eliza recognized the boundary he was setting and didn't press further. "You mentioned Colorado. What's waiting for you there? A job offer?" "Ranch foreman near Denver." He set his empty cup down. "Though I'm beginning to wonder if I'll make it that far." "Because of what happened today?" Eliza asked, suddenly concerned. "Mr. Everett, I would never forgive myself if you suffered consequences for helping me." "Finn," he reminded her. "And don't worry about me. Men like Fletcher Blackwater are used to intimidating others. They rarely expect resistance." "He's dangerous," she insisted. "More than you might realize. There are rumors about men who have crossed him and disappeared." Finn's expression hardened. "I've dealt with dangerous men before." Something in his tone made Eliza believe him. She studied him in the flickering light, wondering what experiences had shaped this man who carried himself with such quiet confidence. "You should get some rest," Finn suggested, changing the subject. "Take the bedroll. I'll keep watch." "That hardly seems fair," Eliza protested. "I'm used to sleeping rough," he assured her. "Besides, after what you've been through today, you need proper rest." Eliza couldn't deny her exhaustion. Her scalp still ached where Fletcher had pulled her hair, and the emotional toll of the day weighed heavily on her. Still, she hesitated. "What if Fletcher comes looking for us?" "He won't find us here," Finn said confidently. "And if by some chance he does, well." He patted the revolver at his hip meaningfully. Reluctantly, Eliza settled onto the bedroll, pulling the woolen blanket around her shoulders. The ground was hard beneath her, but the bedroll provided enough cushioning to make it bearable. She watched as Finn added more wood to the fire, his movements efficient and practiced. "Finn," she said softly. He looked up. "Yes, thank you, not just for stopping him, but for—" She gestured vaguely at their campsite. "All of this." He nodded once. "Get some sleep, Miss Winters." "Eliza," she corrected him with a small smile. "If I'm calling you Finn, you should call me Eliza." The faintest smile touched his lips. "Good night, Eliza." Despite her concerns, exhaustion soon pulled Eliza into sleep. She dreamed of being dragged through endless dust, of reaching hands that never quite grasped hers, until finally a shadow stepped between her and danger, and she could breathe again. When she awoke, gray dawn light filtered through the cottonwood branches. Finn was already up, tending to a fresh fire where coffee brewed once more. "Morning," he greeted her, his voice rough from the night air. "Sleep well." Eliza sat up, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles. "Better than I expected to," she admitted. She reached up to touch her hair, grimacing at the tangles. "I must look a fright." Finn passed her a tin cup of coffee. "There's a spot behind those rocks where you can wash up in the stream if you'd like. I'll keep my back turned." Grateful for his thoughtfulness, Eliza took her small bag and retreated behind the rocks he'd indicated. The water was cold but refreshing as she washed her face and hands, then did her best to comb through her tangled hair with her fingers. She changed into her clean dress, feeling more human with each moment. When she returned to the campfire, Finn had prepared a simple breakfast of dried fruit and hardtack. "Not exactly what you're used to, I imagine," he said as he offered her a portion. "I've adapted to frontier living better than you might think," she replied, accepting the food. "Though I do miss fresh bread." They ate in companionable silence as the sun rose higher, warming the canyon. Eliza found herself studying Finn when he wasn't looking, the careful precision of his movements, the watchful alertness that never seemed to leave him even in this peaceful setting. "What will you do when we return to town?" he asked eventually. Eliza sighed. "Continue teaching, I suppose." "What else can I do? You could leave." His eyes met hers. "Find another town, another school. And let Fletcher win." She shook her head firmly. "I won't be driven away. Those children need me." Finn studied her with newfound respect. "You're braver than most men I've known." "Not brave," she corrected him. "Just stubborn." A smile tugged at his lips. "I'm beginning to see that." As they packed up their camp, Eliza noticed Finn scanning the horizon frequently. "Are you expecting trouble?" she asked. "Always better to expect it than be surprised by it," he replied. "I don't think Blackwater would come after us himself, but he might have sent someone." The possibility sent a chill through her. "Do you think we're being followed?" "No," he said after a moment, "but I'd rather be cautious." He finished saddling his horse and turned to her. "Ready to head back?" Eliza hesitated. The thought of returning to Silver Creek filled her with dread. What would await her there? More harassment from Fletcher. Whispers and judgment from the townspeople. "I'm not sure," she admitted. Finn approached her, stopping an arm's length away. "Whatever happens, you won't face it alone. I'll make sure of that." The simple promise warmed her more than she expected. "You have your own journey to make, to Colorado." "Colorado's been there a long time. It can wait a few more days." Their eyes held for a moment, and Eliza felt something shift between them, a deepening of the connection that had begun the moment he had stood up for her in the street. The ride back to Silver Creek was tense. Every distant dust cloud made them pause. Every sound had Finn reaching for his gun. But they encountered no one on the trail, and by mid-morning the town appeared on the horizon. "We'll stop at the livery first," Finn decided as they approached. "Get the lay of the land before showing ourselves too openly." The liveryman, old Sam Wilson, looked up in surprise as they rode in. "Miss Winters, thank the Lord you're safe. There's been quite a commotion about your disappearance." "What kind of commotion, Sam?" Finn asked, dismounting and helping Eliza down. Sam glanced nervously between them. "Fletcher Blackwater's been telling everyone you kidnapped Miss Winters. Sheriff's got a search party together." "That's absurd," Eliza exclaimed. "Mr. Everett saved me from Fletcher's abuse." "Well, that ain't how Fletcher's telling it," Sam said, lowering his voice. "Says you attacked him unprovoked, Everett, then took Miss Winters against her will." Finn's jaw tightened. "Of course he does." "You'd best get to Sheriff Miller right away," Sam advised. "Clear this up before it gets worse." "Where's Blackwater now?" Finn asked. "Holed up at the Silver Nugget, last I heard, nursing a grudge and a bottle of whiskey." Eliza touched Finn's arm. "We should go to the sheriff. Together. I'll tell him what really happened." Finn nodded grimly. "Let's hope he listens this time." They left the livery, moving cautiously down the side streets toward the sheriff's office. Eliza was acutely aware of curtains moving as they passed, of whispers following in their wake. "Feels like walking into a trap," Finn muttered. "These are good people mostly," Eliza assured him. "They're just afraid of Fletcher." "Fear makes people do terrible things," Finn replied. "Or nothing at all, which can be worse." They reached the sheriff's office to find it empty, a note pinned to the door indicating he was out with the search party. Eliza's heart sank. "Now what?" she asked. Finn considered their options. "The schoolhouse." "You should be safe there until the sheriff returns." They had just turned toward the school when a voice called out behind them. "There they are!" Eliza whirled around to see Fletcher Blackwater standing in the middle of the street, flanked by 3 rough-looking men. His face was flushed with drink and rage. "Caught you coming back to the scene of your crime, Everett," Fletcher shouted, loud enough for the gathering onlookers to hear. "Kidnapping a lady teacher that'll earn you a hanging for sure." Finn stepped slightly in front of Eliza, his voice level when he replied. "Miss Winters left town voluntarily to escape your unwanted attention. As several witnesses saw yesterday, you were the one assaulting her." "That's a lie," Fletcher snarled. "Tell them, Eliza. Tell them how this drifter forced you to go with him." Eliza moved forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Finn. "Mr. Everett saved me from you, Fletcher. You dragged me through the street by my hair because I refused your advances. Everyone saw it." Fletcher's face darkened. "You ungrateful," he cut himself off, visibly struggling for control. When he spoke again, his voice dripped with false concern. "Can't you see, folks? She's been intimidated, frightened into saying what he wants her to say." Murmurs rippled through the growing crowd. Eliza looked around desperately, seeking support from the townspeople she'd taught and lived among for half a year. "You all saw what happened yesterday," she appealed to them. "Fletcher attacked me in broad daylight." Martha Jenkins pushed her way to the front of the crowd. "That's the God's honest truth. I saw it with my own eyes. Fletcher Blackwater, you ought to be ashamed." A few others nodded in agreement, though most still looked uncertain. Fletcher's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Remember who pays your wages, Martha, who keeps this town alive." "Threatening people in front of witnesses," Finn observed dryly. "Not very smart, Blackwater." Fletcher's hand moved toward his gun. "I've had about enough of you, stranger." "Stop this," Eliza cried, stepping forward. "There's no need for violence." "Stay back, Eliza," Finn warned, his own hand hovering near his holster. The tension in the street was palpable. Eliza could see Fletcher's men spreading out, taking positions that would give them clear shots at Finn. "Fletcher Blackwater." The new voice rang out from the edge of town. Sheriff Miller rode in, followed by several mounted men. The search party, Eliza realized. "What in tarnation is going on here?" "Sheriff, thank goodness," Eliza called. "Please, this has all been a terrible misunderstanding." Sheriff Miller dismounted, looking between the two parties with obvious discomfort. "Miss Winters, you're safe. That's the main thing." "No thanks to him," Fletcher said, pointing at Finn. "He took her against her will." "That's not true, Sheriff," Eliza insisted. "I went with Mr. Everett willingly to escape Fletcher after he assaulted me yesterday. You were there. You saw what he did to me." The sheriff shifted uneasily. "Well, now I saw a disagreement between you two." "A disagreement?" Finn echoed incredulously. "He was dragging her through the dirt by her hair." "Exaggerations," Fletcher dismissed with a wave of his hand. "Eliza and I had a minor tiff, that's all. Then this drifter interfered where he wasn't wanted." "Is that how you remember it, Miss Winters?" Sheriff Miller asked, finally looking directly at her. Eliza straightened her spine. "No, Sheriff. Mr. Blackwater has been making unwanted advances for months. Yesterday, when I refused him again, he assaulted me publicly. Mr. Everett intervened to protect me. Fearing for my safety, I asked to leave town with him temporarily." The sheriff frowned, clearly caught between his duty and the reality of Fletcher Blackwater's power in Silver Creek. "That's quite different from what Mr. Blackwater reported." "Of course it is," Finn said dryly. Fletcher took a threatening step forward. "You calling me a liar, Cowboy, if the boot fits," Finn replied calmly. "Enough." Sheriff Miller raised his hands. "This isn't getting us anywhere." He turned to the gathered townspeople. "Did anyone else witness what happened yesterday?" Several moments of uncomfortable silence followed. Then, hesitantly, Doc Wilson stepped forward. "I saw it, Sheriff, from my office window. Fletcher was dragging Miss Winters by the hair, just like she said." Martha nodded vigorously. "We all saw it. Most were just too cowardly to say anything." One by one, others began to nod and murmur in agreement. Fletcher's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful wretches," he spat. "Without my mine, this town would be nothing but dust and tumbleweeds." "Maybe so," Doc Wilson said quietly. "But that doesn't give you the right to mistreat people, Fletcher." Fletcher's hand dropped to his gun. "I've heard enough of this." "Don't do it, Blackwater," Finn warned, his own hand ready. The sheriff moved between them. "I said enough. There'll be no gunplay in my town." He turned to Fletcher. "Based on these testimonies, I'm inclined to believe Miss Winters' account." "You're making a mistake, Miller," Fletcher said, his voice dangerously low. "Remember who pays your salary." Sheriff Miller straightened, something resolute finally appearing in his previously wavering demeanor. "The town pays my salary, Fletcher, and right now the town seems to be speaking pretty clearly." He turned to Finn and Eliza. "Miss Winters, Mr. Everett, I apologize for the misunderstanding." "You're free to go about your business." Eliza nearly sagged with relief. "Thank you, Sheriff." Fletcher wasn't finished. "This isn't over," he promised, his cold eyes fixed on Finn. "Not by a long shot." With a jerk of his head to his men, he turned and stalked toward the saloon. The crowd began to disperse, many coming to express their relief at Eliza's safety or to quietly apologize for not speaking up sooner. "You should be proud," Finn told her quietly as they walked toward the schoolhouse. "It takes courage for people to stand up to a man like Blackwater." "You inspired that." Eliza shook her head. "You did, by showing them it was possible." When they reached the schoolhouse, Eliza unlocked the door with shaking hands. The confrontation had left her drained, her nerves raw. "He won't give up," she said as they stepped inside. "Fletcher isn't used to losing." "Neither am I," Finn replied simply. He moved to the window, scanning the street. "I'll stay with you today, make sure there's no trouble." "You don't have to do that, you've already done so much." Finn turned to face her. "I started this, I'll see it through." "You didn't start anything," Eliza corrected him. "Fletcher did. You just had the courage to finish it." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Either way, I'm not leaving you unprotected." Eliza busied herself preparing the classroom for the next day's lessons, trying to regain some normalcy. Finn watched from near the door, occasionally checking outside. "Will your students return tomorrow?" he asked after a while. "I hope so," Eliza replied, straightening a row of books. "Children are resilient. And often wiser than adults, they know right from wrong without worrying about who owns what mine." Finn's quiet chuckle surprised her. True enough. A knock at the door made them both tense. Finn moved his hand to his gun before calling out. "Who is it?" "Martha Jenkins," came the reply. Eliza hurried to open the door. Martha stood there with a covered basket and a concerned expression. "I brought you some supper," she said, stepping inside. "And news." "What news?" Finn asked, closing the door behind her. Martha set the basket on Eliza's desk. "Fletcher's gathering his men. Word is he's planning something, though no one knows what exactly." Eliza's stomach clenched with fear. "When?" "Soon, I'd guess. He was in a mighty rage when he left the saloon." Martha turned to Finn. "You'd best be careful, Mr. Everett. Fletcher doesn't forget a slight, and he doesn't forgive one either." "I can handle Fletcher Blackwater," Finn said with quiet confidence. Martha wasn't convinced. "You might handle him, but what about the dozen men who work for him? They're loyal or at least well paid." Eliza exchanged a worried glance with Finn. "Maybe you should leave town," she suggested. "Continue to Colorado as you planned. And leave you to face his retaliation." Finn shook his head firmly. "Not a chance." "Both of you could leave," Martha suggested. just until things cool down. My sister has a place in Tucson. You'd be welcome there. Eliza considered it briefly before shaking her head. I can't abandon my students, and running away would only prove Fletcher right that he can bully people into submission. Martha sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. Well, if you're staying, you'll need more than just Mr. Everett for protection. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded paper. I sent word to the marshal in Prescott. He should be here in 2 days. Finn took the paper, a copy of the telegraph Martha had sent. Smart thinking, madam. Can we hold out for 2 days? Eliza asked quietly. We can, Finn assured her. But we'll need a safer place than the schoolhouse or your boarding house. Martha nodded. I've thought of that too. My store has rooms above it. Solid doors with good locks and a back staircase for escape if needed. You'll stay with me tonight. Eliza felt a rush of gratitude for the older woman's practical kindness. Thank you, Martha. I don't know how to repay you. Just stay alive, dear, Martha replied with grim humor. That'll be payment enough. They waited until dusk before making their way to Martha's store, taking back alleys to avoid being seen. Martha's living quarters above the general store were modest but comfortable, with 2 small bedrooms and a cozy sitting area. You'll take my room, Eliza, Martha insisted. Mr. Everett can have the spare. I'll sleep on the settee. I couldn't possibly, Eliza began. No arguments, Martha cut her off. Now let's have supper and make our plans. Over a hearty meal of stew and cornbread, they discussed their options. Finn believed Fletcher would make his move the following night when the town was quiet. We'll need to be ready, he said, spreading out a rough map of Silver Creek that Martha had drawn. All the possible approaches to the store, escape routes, defensive positions. Eliza watched him as he spoke, noting how naturally he assumed command of the situation, how thoroughly he considered every contingency. You've done this before, she observed. Finn looked up, a flicker of something passing across his face. Let's just say this isn't my first disagreement with a man like Blackwater. Who are you really? Eliza asked softly. For a moment it seemed he might evade the question again. Then he sighed, setting down his fork. I was a deputy marshal, based in Texas, then Arizona Territory. Martha prompted. I resigned my position 3 months ago. His eyes met Eliza's. After a situation similar to this one went badly wrong. What happened? Eliza asked gently. Finn's gaze turned distant. Town called Redemption, near the Mexican border. Mining town like this one. Owned by a man named Hollister. He'd been terrorizing the town for years, worse than Blackwater. Killed 3 men that I know of. He paused, his jaw tightening at the memory. I was sent to bring him in. Had the warrant, everything legal and proper. But when I got there, I discovered the local sheriff was in Hollister's pocket. He warned Hollister I was coming. Eliza could see where this was heading. They ambushed you, Finn nodded. Not me, the family that had taken me in. Hollister's men burned their home with them inside, a woman and 2 children. His voice grew rough. By the time I got there, it was too late. My God, Martha whispered. I tracked Hollister down. There was a fight. Finn's hand unconsciously went to the scar through his eyebrow. I killed him and 3 of his men. You were defending yourself, Eliza said. Yes, but afterward. I couldn't go back to wearing the badge, not after I'd failed those people so completely. He met their eyes again. So I handed in my resignation and headed north. Thought I'd try ranching instead, something quieter. And then you rode into Silver Creek, Eliza said softly. A humorless smile touched his lips, and found another Hollister, different name, same breed of man. That explains why you stepped in to help me, why you knew exactly what to do. Old habits, Finn said. Though this time I'm hoping for a different ending. Martha reached across the table to pat his hand. "The marshal will be here soon. You won't be facing this alone. And until then," Eliza added, "you have us." Finn looked between the two women, something like surprise in his expression. "I appreciate that, but I'd prefer to keep you both as far from danger as possible." "This is my town too," Martha said firmly, "and I'm too old to start running now." Eliza nodded in agreement. "Fletcher Blackwater has bullied Silver Creek for too long. It's time someone stood up to him." Finn studied them both, then finally nodded. "All right, but we do this my way, safety first." They spent the next hour planning defenses and contingencies. Martha's store had sturdy shutters that could be barred from inside. The back staircase led to an alley with a clear path to the livery, where they could secure horses if escape became necessary. "We should take shifts watching tonight," Finn suggested. "I'll take the first and longest." "Wake me for the second," Eliza insisted. "I won't be able to sleep much anyway." As Martha prepared for bed, Eliza found herself alone with Finn in the small sitting room. The lamp cast a soft glow over them as Finn checked and cleaned his revolver with practiced movements. "I never thanked you properly," she said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "For everything you've done." Finn glanced up. "No thanks necessary. Still, you could have ridden on, left Silver Creek and its problems behind. Most would have." He set the gun down, his eyes finding hers. "Maybe I'm not most people." "No," she agreed softly. "You're certainly not." Something shifted in the air between them, a tension that had nothing to do with the danger they faced. Finn looked away first. "You should get some rest," he said, his voice slightly rougher than before. "Tomorrow might be a long day." Eliza nodded, rising from her chair. At the door to Martha's bedroom, she paused and looked back. "Finn," he looked up. "I'm glad you rode into Silver Creek when you did." A smile, small but genuine, touched his lips. "So am I." Eliza slept fitfully, waking at every sound from the street below. When Finn finally came to wake her for her watch, she was already sitting up, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. "Any trouble?" she asked immediately. "Quiet so far," he replied. "Too quiet, maybe." She followed him to the window overlooking the main street. Silver Creek lay silent under a blanket of stars, the saloon dark, the only movement the occasional stirring of a hitched horse. "What do we do tomorrow?" she asked. Finn leaned against the window frame. "Stay inside. Keep the shutters closed but not barred. We don't want to look like we're expecting trouble. I'll keep watch from here where I can see the approaches. And if Fletcher comes, we try to talk first, reason with him." Finn's expression suggested he didn't hold much hope for that approach. "If that fails, we defend ourselves." Eliza nodded, trying to appear calmer than she felt. "I'll take watch now. You should sleep." Finn hesitated, studying her face. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." She managed a smile. "Besides, you'll be no use to us tomorrow if you're exhausted. Wake me if anything seems suspicious. Anything at all. I promise." After Finn had gone to the spare room, Eliza settled by the window with Martha's husband's revolver beside her. The night stretched long before her, each sound from the sleeping town magnified in the silence. She found her thoughts drifting to Finn, the quiet strength he emanated, the sense of honor that had driven him to help a stranger being mistreated. In just 2 days, he had come to mean more to her than she could have anticipated. The thought of him leaving for Colorado once this was resolved left an unexpected ache in her chest. Dawn was just beginning to lighten the sky when Eliza heard the soft sound of boots on the wooden sidewalk below. Peering carefully through the curtain, she saw 3 men approaching the store, led by one of Fletcher's foremen, a brutal-faced man named Harlan. Her heart racing, she hurried to wake Finn. He was instantly alert, reaching for his gun before his feet hit the floor. Fletcher's men. he asked, buckling on his gun belt. 3 of them. Coming up the street. Finn nodded. Wake Martha. Tell her to bar the back door. Within minutes, all 3 were positioned in the front room of the apartment. Finn stood to the side of the window where he could see without being seen, while Martha and Eliza waited near the top of the stairs. The sound of fists hammering on the store's front door echoed up to them. "Martha Jenkins," Harlan's voice called. "Open up. Got a delivery for you, at dawn." Martha muttered skeptically. "Not likely." The pounding continued. "We know you're in there, Martha. Open up or we'll break it down." Finn motioned for Martha to respond. "Store doesn't open till 8, she called down. "Come back then. This won't wait," Harlan shouted back. "Fletcher Blackwater wants a word with you. Says you're harboring fugitives." Eliza and Martha exchanged alarmed glances. "There are no fugitives here," Martha replied firmly. "Just a respectable shopkeeper who doesn't appreciate being disturbed before sunrise." A new voice joined in Fletcher himself. "Martha, don't make this difficult. Send Everett and the teacher down and there won't be any trouble." Finn moved to the top of the stairs. "Why don't you come up and talk to me yourself, Blackwater?" he called down. "Or are you only brave when you're dragging women through the street?" A string of curses followed. Then Fletcher's voice again, cold with fury. "You're a dead man, Everett, you hear me?" "Dead? Not the first time I've heard that," Finn replied calmly. "Yet here I still am." The sound of breaking glass came from below. They were smashing the store windows. Martha gasped in distress but held her position. "They're trying to provoke us," Finn warned quietly. "Don't give them what they want." More crashes followed, the sound of merchandise being thrown to the floor, shelves being overturned. Martha's face was white with anger, but she nodded in understanding. Then came a new sound, the splash of liquid being poured, and the sharp odor of lamp oil wafting up the stairs. "They're going to burn us out," Eliza whispered in horror. Finn's expression hardened. "That's where I draw the line." He moved to the top of the stairs, gun drawn. "Blackwater," he shouted. "You set one flame in that store and I'll put a bullet between your eyes." Laughter drifted up from below. "You'll be too busy burning to shoot straight, lawman." Finn's head snapped up in surprise at the title. Eliza realized Fletcher must have discovered Finn's former occupation. "That's right," Fletcher called up, hearing the silence. "I sent a telegram to Prescott myself. Found out all about you, former Deputy Marshal Everett, quite the reputation you had." "Then you know I don't make threats," Finn replied evenly. "I make promises." A tense silence followed. Then Fletcher spoke again, his voice sly. "Tell you what, Everett. You come down, face me like a man, and I'll let the women go. Fair fight, just you and me." "Don't," Eliza pleaded quietly, gripping Finn's arm. "It's a trap." "I know," he assured her. Then louder, "No deal, Blackwater. The marshal's already on his way from Prescott. He'll be here by nightfall." "How do you think he'll react to finding Martha's store burned to the ground and 3 people murdered?" Another silence, longer this time. Eliza could almost hear Fletcher calculating his options. "He's bluffing," Harlan's voice insisted. "There's no marshal coming." "Maybe, maybe not," Fletcher responded. "But if he's telling the truth." The murmur of voices below suggested an argument in progress. Finally, Fletcher called up again. "This isn't over, Everett, not by a long shot, but I'm not about to hang for arson and murder on your say-so." The sound of retreating footsteps followed, then silence. "Are they gone?" Martha whispered. Finn peered cautiously out the window. "For now. They've headed back toward the saloon." Eliza's legs suddenly felt weak with relief. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "Will they be back?" "Yes," Finn said grimly, "but not to burn us out. Fletcher's too smart for that now that he knows the marshal might be coming. He'll try something else." "What do we do?" Martha asked. "We get help," Finn decided. "The town needs to choose sides now while Fletcher's men regroup." The sheriff, Eliza suggested doubtfully. Finn shook his head. Too unreliable, but Doc Wilson spoke up yesterday, and others might if they believe they have a chance against Fletcher. Martha nodded firmly. I'll go. Fletcher's men won't bother an old woman in broad daylight. It's too dangerous, Eliza protested. Nonsense. I've lived in Silver Creek for 30 years. I know every back alley and side door. Besides, she added with a spark of her usual spirit, they've wrecked my store. I'm not in a forgiving mood. Finn considered it, then nodded. Be careful. Tell Doc Wilson and anyone else you trust to meet us here at noon. Armed, if possible. As soon as Martha had slipped out the back way, Finn began barricading the front door and windows of the apartment. Eliza helped, moving furniture to create defensive positions. Do you think the marshal will really arrive today? She asked as they worked. Finn gave her a sidelong glance. I hope so, but I wasn't entirely truthful down there. Martha's telegram only went out yesterday. Even riding hard, the marshal couldn't get here before tomorrow. So we're on our own until then. We might have more allies than you think, Finn replied. People get tired of living under a tyrant's thumb. Sometimes they just need someone to stand up first. By mid-morning, the street below had come to life with the town's regular business, though Eliza noticed people hurrying past Martha's store with averted eyes. The shattered windows and ransacked interior stood as a stark warning of Fletcher's reach. How did Fletcher discover you were a marshal? She asked Finn as they kept watch. He sighed. I'm not sure. Maybe someone in town recognized me. Word gets around. Does it change anything? It might make him more cautious or more desperate. Finn checked his ammunition again. Hard to say with a man like that. At noon precisely, Martha returned through the back entrance, accompanied by Doc Wilson, the blacksmith Tom Murray, and to Eliza's surprise, young Deputy Collins, Sheriff Miller's assistant. Sheriff doesn't know I'm here, Collins said immediately, removing his hat as he entered. But what Fletcher's doing ain't right, and the sheriff's too scared to see it. Finn sized up their small group. 5 of us against Fletcher and his men. Not great odds. 6, corrected a voice from the stairway. Eliza turned to see Sam from the livery, a shotgun cradled in his arms. Came in the back way, he explained with a sheepish grin. Anyone else we can count on? Finn asked. Doc Wilson shook his head. Most folks are keeping their heads down. Can't blame them entirely. Fletcher's been making threats all morning, saying what he'll do to anyone who helps you. But these 6 are enough to make a stand, Martha said firmly. Enough to show the town that Fletcher Blackwater isn't invincible. Finn outlined his plan, a show of force, not a shootout. They would position themselves visibly around town, making it clear that Fletcher would face opposition if he tried anything further against Eliza or Finn. The goal is to hold out until the marshal arrives, he explained. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. As the others prepared to take up their positions, Eliza pulled Finn aside. Let me help too. I can use a gun. Finn studied her face. I'd rather keep you safe here. I'm not hiding while others risk themselves on my behalf, she said firmly. Besides, I'm the one Fletcher wants to punish. For refusing him, for humiliating him publicly. After a moment, Finn nodded. Stay with me then. We'll watch the main approach from the saloon. By early afternoon, their small force was in position. Doc Wilson and Martha remained at the store, which gave them a clear view of the main street. Sam returned to the livery, where he could watch the back approaches to town. Deputy Collins and Tom, the blacksmith, positioned themselves near the sheriff's office, hoping to gain the lawman's support if conflict erupted. Finn and Eliza took up position in the abandoned office above the assayers, directly across from the Silver Nugget saloon. Through the grimy window, they could see Fletcher's men coming and going, gathering on the porch in small groups. "He's planning something," Finn observed. Gathering his forces, Eliza stood beside him, Martha's revolver clutched in her hand. "How many men does he have?" "I count 12, not including Fletcher himself." Finn's expression was grim. "More than I expected." Hours passed in tense vigilance. The afternoon sun beat down on the town, making the office stifling. Eliza wiped sweat from her brow, trying to ignore her parched throat and the cramp developing in her shoulders from tension. "Tell me about Colorado," she said softly, breaking the long silence between them. "The ranch you're heading to." Finn glanced at her, a hint of surprise in his eyes at the casual question amidst their dire circumstances. "It's in a valley near Denver. Cattle operation owned by an old friend from my Army days." "You were in the Army, cavalry, after the war." A faint smile touched his lips. "That's where I learned to ride and shoot." "Is that where you want to be, working cattle in Colorado?" Finn was quiet for a moment, considering. "I thought so. After redemption, I wanted peace, simplicity." And now his eyes met hers. "Now I'm not so sure." The intensity of his gaze made her heart beat faster. In the confined space of the dusty office, she was acutely aware of his presence, the strength in his lean frame, the quiet confidence in his movements. Despite the danger surrounding them, she felt safe with him in a way she couldn't explain. "Finn, she began, but stopped as he suddenly tensed, his attention returning to the street. "They're moving," he said, all business again. "Fletcher's leading them out." Eliza peered through the window. Fletcher Blackwater stood on the saloon porch, addressing his assembled men. Though they couldn't hear his words, his gestures made his intent clear. He was pointing toward Martha's store. "He's going after Martha first," Finn realized, "trying to draw us out." "We have to warn them," Eliza said urgently. Finn nodded. "Stay here. I'll circle around the back way." "No," she insisted, gripping his arm. "We stay together, remember." For a moment he looked as though he might argue, then he nodded once. "Stay close behind me. If there's shooting, find cover immediately." They slipped down the back stairs of the assayer's office and into the narrow alley behind the buildings. Moving quickly but cautiously, they made their way toward Martha's store, keeping to the shadows. They were halfway there when shots rang out from the direction of the main street. Finn pulled Eliza into a recessed doorway, shielding her with his body as they listened to the chaos erupting. "Sounds like it's coming from the store," he said grimly. "Martha and Doc," Eliza breathed. "We have to help them." More gunfire echoed through the town, followed by shouting. Finn peered around the corner, then drew back. Fletcher's men have surrounded the store, Doc's returning fire from the upper window. Eliza's heart raced. What about the others? As if in answer, the thunder of a shotgun blast came from the direction of the livery. Sam had joined the fight. "We need to get to higher ground," Finn decided. "Get a better view of what we're dealing with." They doubled back, climbing an external staircase to the roof of the feed store. From there, they could see the standoff below. Fletcher's men had taken positions around Martha's store, firing occasionally at the upper windows where Doc Wilson returned fire. Deputy Collins and the blacksmith were pinned down near the sheriff's office, unable to advance or retreat. And in the middle of the main street stood Sheriff Miller himself, gesturing frantically for both sides to cease fire. "The sheriff's finally decided to do his job," Finn observed dryly. "Will Fletcher listen to him?" "Doubtful. But it might distract him long enough for us to get to Martha and Doc." They descended quickly, working their way along the back of the buildings until they reached the rear entrance to Martha's store. As Finn had predicted, Fletcher's men were all focused on the front, giving them a clear approach. They slipped inside, finding the store in worse condition than before. Merchandise lay scattered across the floor, and several small fires smoldered where bullets had struck oil lamps. "Martha," Eliza called softly. "Doc." Doc Wilson appeared at the top of the back stairs, his face smudged with soot. "Thank God," he said when he saw them. "Martha's been hit." Eliza's blood ran cold. "How bad?" "Shoulder wound. She's lost some blood, but she'll live if we can get her to my office." They followed Doc upstairs, where Martha lay on a makeshift pallet, her face pale but determined. A bloodied bandage covered her left shoulder. "About time you two showed up," she greeted them with a weak attempt at humor. "Fletcher's gone mad. Says he's going to burn the whole town if necessary." Finn knelt beside her. "We'll get you out of here. Can you walk?" "With help," Martha affirmed. More gunfire erupted outside, followed by the sheriff's voice through a speaking trumpet. "This is your last warning, Blackwater. Throw down your weapons and surrender. Go to hell, Miller." Fletcher's voice responded. "This is between me and Everett." Finn moved to the window, keeping to the side as he assessed the situation. "Sheriff's got a few townspeople with him now. Looks like opinions are starting to shift." "Fletcher won't give up," Doc warned. "Not with so many witnesses to his humiliation." "Then we need to end this," Finn said firmly, "before anyone else gets hurt." Eliza touched his arm. "What are you planning?" "Fletcher wants me. I'll give him what he wants face-to-face, man-to-man." His eyes met hers, silencing her protest before she could voice it. "It's the only way, Eliza. Otherwise, this turns into a bloodbath with the whole town caught in the middle. He'll kill you," she whispered. "Maybe," Finn acknowledged, "but I don't think so." There was no bravado in his voice, just quiet confidence. "I've faced worse odds." Doc Wilson looked between them. "While you distract Fletcher, we can get Martha out through the back." Finn nodded. "Wait for my signal." He turned to Eliza, his expression softening. "Stay with them, please." She wanted to argue, to insist on staying with him, but she knew he was right. Martha needed her more. "Be careful," she said instead. Something flashed in his eyes, a warmth that made her breath catch. Then, to her surprise, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a brief, fierce kiss. "For luck," he murmured as he pulled away. Before she could respond, he was moving, checking his gun one last time before heading down the stairs. Eliza touched her lips, her heart pounding as she watched him go. "That man loves you," Martha observed quietly from her pallet. Eliza looked at her in surprise. "We barely know each other." Martha smiled weakly. "Sometimes a few days is all it takes to know your heart." Outside, Finn's voice rang out above the sporadic gunfire. "Blackwater, let's end this, you and me, face to face." A momentary hush fell over the street. "Why should I trust you, Everett?" Fletcher's voice called back. "Because I'm walking out unarmed," Finn replied. "Just you and me, man to man." Eliza rushed to the window, horrified to see Finn stepping into the street, his hands raised and empty. He had left his gun belt behind. "Finn, no," she whispered. Fletcher emerged from behind the water trough where he'd been sheltering, his gun still in his hand. "You must think I'm a fool, Everett." "I think you're a coward," Finn replied calmly. "Hiding behind your men, threatening women and old folks, prove me wrong." Fletcher's face contorted with rage. "I'll kill you where you stand." "And hang for murder with 20 witnesses." Finn shook his head. "Even you aren't that stupid, Blackwater." A tense silence fell over the street as the two men faced each other. Then, slowly, Fletcher holstered his gun. "All right, lawman, have it your way." He stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "I've been wanting to do this since you showed up." Doc Wilson touched Eliza's shoulder. "Now's our chance, while everyone's distracted." Reluctantly, Eliza helped Martha to her feet. With Doc supporting Martha on one side and Eliza on the other, they made their slow way down the back stairs. Eliza's every instinct screamed at her to stay, to help Finn somehow. but she knew her first responsibility was to get Martha to safety. They had just reached the bottom of the stairs when the sound of fists meeting flesh echoed from the street, followed by shouts and jeers from the onlookers. "Keep going," Doc urged as Eliza hesitated. They emerged into the back alley, moving as quickly as Martha's condition would allow toward Doc's office. From the main street came the sounds of a brutal fight, grunts of pain, the thud of blows, occasional cheers or gasps from spectators. "I need to see what's happening," Eliza said as they reached Doc's back door. "Eliza, don't," Martha began, but Eliza had already slipped away, moving to the corner where she could see the main street. What she saw made her blood run cold. Finn and Fletcher were locked in combat in the center of the street, both bloodied and dust-covered. But Fletcher was clearly getting the upper hand. He was larger, heavier, and fought with the vicious abandon of a man unaccustomed to losing. As she watched, he landed a powerful blow to Finn's ribs that made him stagger. Without thinking, Eliza rushed forward, pushing through the crowd until she reached the edge of the impromptu fighting ring. Sheriff Miller stood nearby, making no move to intervene. "Stop this," she cried. "Sheriff, do something." Miller shook his head. "They agreed to settle it this way, Miss Winters, man to man." Fletcher landed another punishing blow, sending Finn to one knee. Blood streamed from a cut above Finn's eye, the same one with the old scar, and he was breathing heavily. "Had enough, lawman?" Fletcher taunted, circling him. Ready to beg, Finn spat blood onto the dirt. "Not today." With surprising speed, he lunged forward, tackling Fletcher around the waist and driving him backward into the dust. The crowd roared as the fight intensified, the two men rolling in the street, each seeking advantage. For a moment, Finn gained the upper hand, landing several solid punches that snapped Fletcher's head back. But Fletcher's greater weight soon told, and he managed to flip their positions, pinning Finn beneath him. "I'm going to enjoy this," Fletcher snarled, his hands closing around Finn's throat. Eliza screamed as she saw Finn struggling for breath, his face reddening as Fletcher choked the life from him. The sheriff finally moved forward, but too slowly. Without hesitation, Eliza rushed into the street, grabbing a discarded piece of lumber from the damaged store. With all her strength, she swung it at Fletcher's head. The wood connected with a sickening crack. Fletcher's grip loosened as he slumped sideways, stunned by the blow. Finn gasped for air, rolling away from his attacker. "You little," Fletcher began, rising unsteadily to his feet. But before he could move toward Eliza, Finn was between them, his stance steady despite his injuries. "It's over, Fletcher," he said, his voice raspy from the choking. "You've lost." Fletcher looked around wildly, seeing the tide of opinion had turned. Most of his men had backed away, unwilling to escalate the situation further. The townspeople had formed a loose circle, many now holding weapons of their own. "This isn't over," Fletcher spat, blood trickling from his split lip. "This town is mine. You're nothing but a drifter, Everett. You'll be gone tomorrow, and I'll still be here." "No," came a new voice. Sheriff Miller stepped forward, his badge gleaming in the late afternoon sun. "You won't be, Fletcher." Fletcher stared at him in disbelief. "What are you talking about, Miller?" The sheriff straightened to his full height. "Fletcher Blackwater, I'm arresting you for assault, attempted murder, and destruction of property." His voice grew stronger with each word. "You've terrorized this town for the last time." "You can't arrest me," Fletcher scoffed. "I own you, not anymore." Miller nodded to Deputy Collins, who stepped forward with manacles. "Silver Creek deserves better." For a moment, it seemed Fletcher might resist. His hand twitched toward his holster, but a dozen guns raised in response, and he finally seemed to understand that his reign was truly over. "You'll regret this," he snarled as Collins cuffed his wrists. "All of you." "Take him to the jail," Miller ordered. "The marshal can deal with him when he arrives." As Fletcher was led away, the tension in the street gradually dissipated. Townsfolk approached Finn and Eliza, offering congratulations and apologies in equal measure. "You need medical attention," Eliza told Finn, supporting him as he swayed slightly on his feet. He managed a pained smile. "I've had worse." "That doesn't reassure me," she replied, leading him toward Doc Wilson's office. Inside, they found Doc already tending to Martha, whose color was improving. He looked up as they entered, his eyes widening at Finn's condition. "Sit down before you fall down," he ordered, gesturing to a chair. "I'll be with you as soon as I finish with Martha." Eliza helped Finn to the chair, then fetched clean water and cloths to begin washing the blood from his face. His left eye was swelling shut, and his knuckles were raw and bleeding. "That was foolish," she scolded gently as she cleaned his wounds. Facing him unarmed. "It worked, didn't it?" Finn winced as the cloth touched a particularly tender spot. "Only because I hit him with a piece of wood," she reminded him. A smile tugged at his split lip. "My hero." Despite herself, Eliza smiled back. "I think that's supposed to be my line." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding deeper than words. Eliza's hand stilled on his face, suddenly aware of how close they were. "You kissed me," she said softly, "before you went out there." "I did," he agreed, his voice equally quiet. "I should apologize for the liberty." "Don't," she interrupted. "Don't apologize." His eyes darkened. "Eliza." The door burst open, interrupting the moment. Sheriff Miller entered, his expression a mixture of contrition and determination. "Everett," he greeted with a nod. "Miss Winters." "Doc." He removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "I came to thank you and to apologize for not acting sooner." Finn straightened in his chair, wincing at the movement. "Better late than never, Sheriff." Miller nodded soberly. "Fletcher's locked up tight. His men have scattered, most heading back to the mine, a few leaving town altogether." He hesitated. "I sent another telegram to the marshal explaining the situation. He should be here by tomorrow afternoon." "Good," Finn said. "Fletcher has a lot to answer for." "As do I," Miller admitted. "I let him have too much power for too long. That changes now." He turned to Eliza. "Miss Winters, on behalf of Silver Creek, I apologize for what you've endured. This town is lucky to have you." Eliza nodded, accepting his apology. "What happens now?" "We rebuild," Miller said simply. "Starting with Martha's store. I've already got volunteers gathering to help with repairs." After the sheriff left, Doc Wilson finished with Martha and turned his attention to Finn's injuries. 2 cracked ribs, numerous contusions, and the reopened scar above his eye required careful attention. "You're lucky he didn't do worse," Doc commented as he bandaged Finn's ribs. "Fletcher's put men in the ground with his bare hands before." "Not today," Finn replied, his eyes finding Eliza's across the room. When Doc finally finished, darkness had fallen over Silver Creek. The streets were quiet except for the sounds of work at Martha's store, where townspeople were boarding up windows and clearing debris by lantern light. "You both should rest," Doc advised. "Martha's staying here tonight where I can keep an eye on her." "Miss Winters, your boarding house should be safe now with Fletcher locked up." Eliza nodded, though the thought of returning to her solitary room held little appeal after everything that had happened. "And Mr. Everett?" "I'll find a place," Finn assured her, rising carefully from the chair. "Nonsense," Doc said. "With those ribs, you shouldn't be moving much. I have a spare room in back. It's yours for the night." Finn accepted with a grateful nod. As Eliza prepared to leave, he caught her hand. "I'll walk you to your boarding house." "You can barely walk yourself," she protested. "Humor me." Despite Doc's objections, Finn insisted on accompanying Eliza. They walked slowly through the quiet streets, Finn moving stiffly but determinedly beside her. "Will you still leave for Colorado?" she asked as they approached the boarding house. Finn was silent for a moment. "I'm not sure. The marshal might offer you your job back," she suggested. "After what you did here." "Maybe," he acknowledged, "but I'm not sure that's what I want anymore." They stopped at the bottom of the boarding house steps. In the silver moonlight, Finn's bruised face looked somehow more vulnerable, more human than it had before. "What do you want, Finn?" Eliza asked softly. His eyes held hers. "2 days ago I thought I knew, now." He shook his head slightly. "Now I'm not so sure." Eliza's heart beat faster at the implication in his words. "A lot can change in 2 days." "Yes," he agreed. "It can." Neither moved to climb the steps. Instead, they stood in the moonlight, the space between them charged with unspoken possibilities. "When I saw Fletcher choking you," Eliza said finally, "I thought I was going to lose you before." She trailed off, unable to find the words. "Before what?" Finn prompted gently. "Before I had the chance to know you," she finished. "Really know you." Finn's hand came up to touch her cheek, his touch feather light. "I'm still here." "Yes," she whispered. "You are." This time, when his lips met hers, there was no urgency, no desperation, just a tender exploration. A question and an answer passed between them without words. Eliza's hands came up to rest lightly on his chest, mindful of his injuries but unwilling to break the connection between them. When they finally parted, Finn's eyes remained closed for a moment, as if committing the sensation to memory. When he opened them, the emotion Eliza saw there made her breath catch. "I should go in," she said reluctantly. "And you should rest," he nodded. "I'll come by in the morning. Promise." A smile touched his lips. "Promise." Eliza climbed the steps, pausing at the door to look back at him. He stood watching her, a solitary figure in the moonlight. "Good night, Finn." "Good night, Eliza." Morning brought the warm glow of sunshine and the sounds of Silver Creek coming back to life. Eliza dressed carefully, choosing her best day dress, a modest blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. Her hair, still tender from Fletcher's rough treatment, she arranged simply but neatly. When she stepped onto the boarding house porch, she found Finn already waiting, leaning against the railing. Despite his injuries, he had made an effort with his appearance as well. His clothes were clean, his hair neatly combed, and he had somehow procured a fresh shirt. "Good morning," she greeted him, unable to keep the smile from her face. "Morning," he replied, his own smile lighting his battered features. "I thought we might have breakfast at the hotel. If you're amenable, I'd like that." They walked together through town, where signs of rebuilding were already evident. Martha's store had new windows being installed, and several townspeople called out greetings as they passed. "You're quite the heroes," observed Mrs. Peterson, the hotel proprietress, as she seated them in the dining room. "On the house today, both of you." Over plates of eggs, bacon, and biscuits, they discussed the events of the previous day and what might come next. "The marshal should arrive by mid-afternoon," Finn said, wincing slightly as he reached for his coffee. "He'll take Fletcher to Prescott to stand trial." "Will you go with them?" Eliza asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Finn studied her face. "Would you want me to?" "No," she admitted softly, "but I wouldn't ask you to stay for my sake either." His hand found hers across the table. "What if I wanted to stay, not just for you but for myself as well?" Hope fluttered in her chest. "What about Colorado, the ranch job? I could find work here," he said. "Silver Creek might need a new deputy, or I could try ranching on a smaller scale. There's good land outside town." "Are you serious?" Eliza searched his face for any sign of uncertainty. "I am," Finn confirmed, his fingers tightening around hers. "When I rode into Silver Creek 2 days ago, I was just passing through. But now," she prompted. Now I've found something worth staying for." His eyes held hers, open and honest in a way they hadn't been before. "If you'll have me." Eliza's heart soared. "I think the school board might be persuaded to overlook the impropriety of their teacher courting the new deputy." A smile broke across Finn's face, transforming it despite the bruises. "Is that a yes, Miss Winters?" "It's a yes, Mr. Everett." Impulsively, she leaned across the table and pressed a quick kiss to his lips, heedless of the other diners watching with indulgent smiles. As they left the hotel, they found Martha waiting for them, her arm in a sling but her spirit undimmed. "There you are. Come see what they've done with the store. It's nearly good as new." The rest of the morning passed in a flurry of activity. The town seemed determined to make amends for its previous inaction, rallying around Martha, Eliza, and Finn with offers of help and support. By noon, Martha's store was ready to reopen, the damage from Fletcher's men almost entirely repaired. As promised, the marshal arrived in mid-afternoon, a stern-faced man named Garrett who clearly commanded respect. After hearing the full story from Sheriff Miller, Finn, and various townspeople, he went to the jail to take custody of Fletcher Blackwater. "You did good work here, Everett," Marshal Garrett said afterward as they stood outside the sheriff's office. "The kind of work that reminds me why I asked you to reconsider your resignation 3 months ago." Finn nodded. "I appreciate that, sir." "Offer still stands," Garrett said. "We need good men, men who stand up when others won't." Finn's eyes found Eliza, who stood a short distance away with Martha. "I'm honored, sir, but I think I've found where I belong." The marshal followed his gaze and smiled knowingly. "I see. Well, if you ever change your mind, you'll be the first to know," Finn promised. They watched as Fletcher was led out in chains, his once commanding presence diminished by defeat. He paused when he saw Finn and Eliza, hatred burning in his eyes. "This isn't over," he spat. "I'll be back." "No, Fletcher," Sheriff Miller said firmly. "You won't. The mine is being sold to the miners as a cooperative. Your house and land will cover the damages to those you've hurt. When you finish your prison term, if you finish it, there'll be nothing left for you here." Fletcher's face contorted with rage, but the marshal's deputies urged him forward toward the waiting wagon that would take him to Prescott. As Fletcher was driven away, a spontaneous cheer erupted from the gathered townspeople. Years of fear and intimidation lifted with his departure, leaving a palpable sense of relief and possibility in the air. "What now?" Eliza asked, coming to stand beside Finn. He smiled down at her. "Now we build something new, together." 6 months later, on a crisp autumn day, the town of Silver Creek gathered for a celebration. Lanterns hung from every storefront. Tables groaned under the weight of food contributed by every household, and a small band played lively tunes in the town square. In the center of it all stood Finn and Eliza Everett, newly married that morning in the small white church at the edge of town. Eliza's white dress, made with loving care by Martha and several other ladies of the town, gleamed in the late afternoon sunlight. Finn, handsome in a new black suit, kept his hand firmly in hers as they accepted congratulations from what seemed like every resident of Silver Creek and the surrounding county. "Deputy and Mrs. Everett," Sheriff Miller toasted, raising his glass. "May your future be as bright as the new day you helped bring to our town." The crowd echoed the sentiment with raised glasses and cheers. In the months since Fletcher's departure, Silver Creek had transformed. The mine, now operated as a cooperative owned by the miners themselves, was producing better than ever. New businesses had opened, including a second saloon that catered to families as well as the usual clientele, and even a small newspaper run by a young couple from San Francisco. Finn had indeed taken the position of deputy, proving himself so capable that there was talk of him running for sheriff when Miller retired the following year. Eliza continued teaching, though with the town's growth, she now had an assistant to help with the younger children. They had purchased a small piece of land just outside town, where Finn was building a house with his own hands. In the meantime, they occupied rooms above the newly expanded schoolhouse, convenient for both their positions. Happy? Finn asked softly as they took a moment away from the celebration, standing in the shadow of the church. Eliza smiled up at him, her eyes shining with joy and promise. Happier than I ever thought possible, even when you were being dragged through the dust by Fletcher Blackwater. He teased gently. She laughed, the sound bright and carefree. Especially then, because that's when you appeared and said no more. Finn's arms encircled her waist, drawing her close. Best decision I ever made. Taking on Fletcher Blackwater. Taking a chance on love, he corrected, his voice dropping to a whisper. On you. On us. As the setting sun bathed Silver Creek in golden light, Finn lowered his lips to his wife's in a tender kiss that promised a lifetime of love and partnership. From the darkest beginnings had come the brightest future, one they would build together, day by day, in the town that had brought them to each other. And as night fell and lanterns illuminated the continuing celebration, Eliza and Finn slipped away, hand in hand, toward the beginning of their shared journey, a journey that had started when a brave cowboy had said, "No more," and changed both their lives forever.